did you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone. Today is a bit of an update on what has been going on the PTS. Now, I know a lot of you have probably seen the forum post about light and heavy attacks changing. Now, just bear in mind, of course, this is an idea presented to us by ZOS and they're allowing us to test it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going into the game. Doesn't mean it's not, but it doesn't mean it definitely is. This is an opportunity for us to see what goes on behind the scenes and actually test stuff that they are forwarding as an idea rather than, by the way, this is happening, test it and we'll optimize it. This may or may not enter the game. So this isn't actually tied to any particular patch. It's not tied to Harrowstorm, it's not tied to Greymore. It's just an idea to see whether the community likes it or not and whether they can adapt to these particular changes or whether something else needs to be done. Anyway, so the basic idea is light attacks are to hit with light damage and heavy attacks are supposed to hit with heavy damage. The light attack itself has been reduced in terms of damage output by 78%, which may seem a bit extreme, but we do get resources back now, and that's pretty substantial. It's a bit of a difference when it comes to actually sticking to your rotation rather than heavy attacking all the time, especially if you're one of those builds that doesn't really want to heavy attack and you want to be able to sustain indefinitely. There are ways to do it now if you keep up your light attacks. Partially charged heavy attacks, which are basically medium attacks, now start to scale at the same damage as a light attack, and scale up to their maximum of their respective cap to ensure they always deal more damage than a light attack, but never more than a fully charged heavy. So it does scale off of the light values, and it does escalate depending on how long you're holding it, but it won't do as much as the full pop of a heavy attack, basically. Now, heavy attacks do vary in damage depending on their cast time. We're reading through the notes a little bit here, by the way. And are built to always deal approximately 10% more DPS when weaving their ability when compared to light attack weaving. Now, that sounds like heavy attacks are more powerful than light attacks on a build flat out. That's not necessarily true, because while you're heavy attacking, yes, of course, it does more damage than a light. You're not using any skills right now. But while you're light attacking, you are. So your light has dropped, but your skill is being put down. Your heavy has gone up, but you're not applying any skills. There's the trade-off. Now, obviously, heavy attacks are much, much easier to do, so newer players or lesser complicated builds do actually benefit from the high damage output of the heavy instead of being able to spam these. But people that do spam abilities will be able to weave their light attacks in with skill and still be very, very successful and not have to do this all day to get their resources back because their build can't sustain. Lots of different variations or situations where these can benefit or slightly alter depending on your setup. Now, dual wield attacks do approximately 31% more damage. Bow attacks do 12% more and reduce their cast times by 550 milliseconds, which is really nice. Bow heavy attacks no longer reduce your movement speed while charging either, so you've got that agility side to the bow still kind of worked in there. Two-hander attacks will actually do 62% more damage. Just bear in mind, of course, the two-hander passives do benefit you if you heavy attack something, so your next ability is stronger, so that's quite nice. Your one-hand and shield heavy attacks are 24% stronger, and their cast times are reduced by 150 milliseconds. Reworked resto staff heavy attacks have 2 ticks of a channel, and the final hit damage to denote the fully charged state. Now, this is slightly different. The first 2 ticks of damage are untouched, but the final tick will do 238% increased damage in comparison to before. Now that is quite substantial because the heavy attack from the resto staff, although at the moment is mostly being used for resource return, does actually apply a heal based on the damage done. So if you do a really hard hitting resto heavy attack, that's going to help heal somebody. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Remove the 200 millisecond delay on the attack because it was a little bit clunky, and your movement speed is no longer reduced while channeling. So if you are a healer, heavy attack, and you don't have to slow right down, you can still move around inside mechanics. And the final hit can now be dodged. So in PvP, that's a little different, especially if you're applying stuff like Night Slayer and shit like that, where you actually hit with Oblivion damage on the last tick. You can now dodge that last tick so people can't kind of cheese it, if you know what I mean. Unarmed heavy attacks are up by 24%. We need an unarmed skill line for that to be really beneficial, but it's quite fun, especially if you're doing dueling tournaments and you're just brawling and punching the shit out of each other. Werewolf heavy attacks now deal approximately 62% more damage. For Lungdren, heavy attacks now deal 22.7% more damage. Medium attacks now properly scale between 1,050 and 12,270 based on the charge time rather than dealing a flat 5k. So heavies from that particular weapon are actually quite strong. Inferno and Frost Staff attacks now deal 12% more damage and reduce their cast time by 300 milliseconds. That is also very, very nice because although we're not getting resources back from it, we are still getting a faster channel time, which is actually helpful because, to be fair, the Flame Staff and the Ice Staff is far too slow. They also no longer remove or reduce your movement speed that you have at the time while casting. So if you are firing a Flame Staff, for example, let's put one on, you can basically, where is it gone? Wind it up like this, which is a bit quicker. Actually, it does feel a lot faster. Almost a third of a second on the heavy attack. So that's quite handy. Now, the Lightning Staff is very different. Remove the 200 millisecond delay of the attack, so you can apply one heavy attack and apply another one very, very fast afterwards. So instead of sitting there and having a gap between the two, once it's finished, you do another one almost instantly, which is quite nice. Your movement speed is no longer reduced while channeling. That's quite simple. While channeling, you can run around full speed. The bonus damage versus off balance is now 33% more, not 70. So we have lost overall damage on off-balance heavy attacks. It used to be 70%, but things have also been altered there too, because the Lightning Staff heavy attack has been increased by 34% flat out, the channeled part of it, and the final hit now deals an extra 190% damage. So what you're looking for, in fact, is on the combat metrics, if you're on PC, is Shock Pulse, which is the last pop of the heavy attack here. That pop at the end there, that 19k, that escalates like hell. That used to be less, now it's obviously more. So that benefits as well. Although the overall channel has improved slightly, the channel of the off balance has reduced slightly, the pop at the end is much, much bigger. So on average, you should be hitting harder, not just during off balance, but you still get a bonus during off balance nonetheless. Now, partially charged heavy attacks will no longer knock enemies down if they can be stunned, but the fully charged heavy attack will, of course. Now, light attacks return resources, but the more you use in a row, the more you get back. Capped at 4. So after 4, you'll hit your maximum, but you can actually end up restoring, instead of 200 per hit, you can actually end up restoring up to 1,000. However, if the target is off balance, you get a bigger bonus. So the off balance light attacks actually return more. Your initial hit will actually restore 1,200 instead of 200 flat out, and this can stack up to 4 times on top of your first one. So the cap is 4 essentially to start with. Your first light attack, then 3 on top. During off balance, your stack is 5. Your first light attack and 4 on top. So you can actually end up restoring up to 2,000 if you do multiple light attacks in quick succession during off balance. Now we're going to demonstrate that briefly just to show you how much resources you can get back over a short period of time. So we're going to nuke our resources right here just by throwing out loads of these mines. Come on. It takes forever to get rid of all this, even though they're expensive. So we'll go really, really low, and then we'll spam light attack on this target here. Not too bad. Takes a little while, but then it starts going up really, really fast, like 4 or 5% at a time. The more light attacks you do in a row and keep up those stacks of 4, the better. Now let's do it with off balance. That's insane. Really, really fast. And it gets quicker and quicker and quicker. So the more light attacks you do in a row, the more aggressive that gets. You can get up to 2k every single hit. It's insane, as long as the target is obviously off balance at the time. So before, you used to utilize off balance to do heavy attacks, which you can still do for the damage increase, but now you can utilize light attacks during the off balance phase to get your resources back from those. So it's a flip around on that whole idea. You still get the damage increase from off balance stuff, but your resources are higher if you spam lights. So that does affect people's builds somewhat. Although, just remember, of course, your 1,200 back for doing light attacks on an off-balance target means your spamming rotations are really easy to keep up. Now, there are a few other things to consider. Now, first of all, Empower has been altered. Instead of activating Empower and increasing your light attack damage, which as you can see it doesn't consume it at all, it actually increases our heavy. So if we do a normal heavy attack on this target without any buffs running at the moment, apart from our glyph perhaps, the end result of this crit pulse at the end is 20k. Now, if we activate Empower first, and then do it, it's 29. Now, we're going to heavy attack with this guy with Empower running. Make sure all our buffs are on. 72k. That pulse at the end was 72,000. Now, during execute, that can go in excess of around the 90k mark. If you've got major vulnerability and all that good stuff, over 100k just for finishing a heavy attack. Now, of course, this is a very different way to receive the heavy attack because you get no resources back. But if you can keep on top of it, it's not so bad. And it's a lot easier to still maintain your own play style without sacrificing anything, essentially. Now, I'm going to show you a good demonstration of that in a moment. Now, there are some passives and such that have been changed. A couple of weapon passives as well, especially the Trifocus. That's gone down from 100% down to 25%. But remember, our flat damage output, rather, from our heavy attacks has been increased with a Lightning Star, for example, by over 34%. So that's a drop, but then you gain it again because if something does go off balance, your base is already high, your off balance has now gone up. It's not far off what it already is. So you are still gaining from it. They just had to drop that because if we increase the heavy attack damage and still keep 100% for Trifocus, we're going to be slightly overpowered. Anyway, that is also reflective of the two-hander passive because the two-handers do hit harder now, so the splash damage instead of being 50% is now 25%. Anyway, without all the details and going over some stupid stuff, oh, one more thing to note, by the way, Tenacity now affects your light attack return. So if we check here real quick, you will see champion points. This no longer increases heavy attack restore, it increases light attack restore, which is quite helpful. Now I'm going to show you a quick demonstration. There's two different builds here. One is for stamina and one is for magicka. One is fully focused on taking full advantage of the heavy attack damage output that you can use with multiple sets stacking up to increase that. And the other setup is very advanced and more for the, let's say, more experienced player. One is more spammy with no heavy attacks if possible. The other is utilizing heavy attacks. We're going to see how those are altered or how they pair up against each other on live versus PTS. You'll be surprised at the results. You will actually see, believe it or not, that the way the light attacks have been changed actually enhances the sustain of a more spammy build. Here we go. So as you can see, there's not a dramatic change. I mean, yes, you'll have to adapt a very small amount, but it's not that different. I mean, you can still play the same way you are. You might just have to jiggle some stats. Like in the easy sort, perhaps we change the food with a bit more recovery and we put 1 glyph on. On the DK, didn't change a damn thing, and we've got more recovery. How cool is that? So the more advanced build actually sustains a lot better. The lesser advanced build still does roughly the same damage, and we've managed to sustain anyway. Win-win. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully that alleviates some of the panic. Just bear in mind, again, this is just for testing at the moment. There is no patch tied to this at this stage. It's just a between patch update on PTS saying, hey everyone, try this out, we were thinking it would be quite cool. If you like it, then of course give us feedback. If you don't like it, then of course give them some feedback. But don't go onto the forums screaming about how much you hate everyone and how much the devs don't play their game, because at the end of the day, that's not feedback, that's just you crying. If they get actual responses, both positive and negative, without the screaming, then they can work on it to better the game in the future. Just remember, not all feedback has to be positive. It can be negative. You could hate it, but say why you don't like it. That way, ZeniMax can actually look into it and say, do you know what? We maybe see this as a problem as well. You never know. But honestly, screaming out loud, saying how everybody sucks is only going to get you ignored. So, get on the PTS if you can, test it out, see if you like it, see if you don't. Failing that, gauge it from the video, chuck your comments in the section below. Let's see what you think about it. Anyway, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. If you're not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of YouTube, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website, xynodegaming.com. There will be a link in the description as well to these particular PTS patch notes, so you can go over it in your own time if you aren't so sure of what's actually going on, or perhaps if I'm talking too fast and you missed some of it. Anyway, once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.